Good evening. Welcome to another edition of the 411 Talk Zone radio show, Red Pill Edition. My name is Leon Jones. And in this segment, I'm going to hit you with a heavy hitter, something that I wanted to do for a long time. And it is premiering tonight here on the 411 Talk Zone radio show. Tonight's topic, I'm going to get into paraphilia. Notice what I said now. I said paraphilia. So the title of tonight's video is Paraphilia and Mental Health. Now, when we deal with paraphilia, we deal with the sexual deviancies that are involved with paraphilia. Let me share my screen and show you what I'm talking about. So, when we deal with paraphilia, basically what I'm talking about are abnormal sexual behaviors or impulses characterized by intense sexual fantasies and urges that keep coming back. In other words, there could be a sexual addiction that's taken place. Now, the urges and behaviors may involve unusual objects, activities, or situations that are not usually considered sexually arousing by others. Now, often a paraphilia may be necessary for the person who has it to function sexually, despite the fact that it may also be a source of significant distress. Now, paraphilias can lead to personal, social, and career problems, and a person with a paraphilia may be called kinky or perverted. Now, the associated behaviors may also have serious social and legal consequences. Now, again, with every mental health disorder, we have to talk about behaviors. Now, when it comes to paraphilia, one must ask what behaviors are considered paraphilias? Now, some of these terms you may be familiar with, some may be foreign to you. But after you watch this video, you're going to get an idea of what I'm talking about. Because in the real world, there's a lot of this going around. Again, this is where you get your sexual deviant behaviors from, paraphilia. Now, first of all, when we talk about behaviors, the first order of business, when it comes to a behavior, we must talk about exhibitionism, or we call it flashing. And this is why I always tell a woman, make sure you have your blinds closed when you're in the bathroom, because believe it or not, you've had some individuals who want to walk up to your window, they want to masturbate by seeing you undress. They want to flash themselves, and they want to see that you're already flashing yourself. And this is deviant behavior because it's very much perverted. Again, when we deal with exhibitionism, it involves someone exposing their genitals to an unsuspecting stranger. Now, the individual with this problem, sometimes called a flasher, basically has a feel. And that feel is a need to surprise, shock, or impress their victims. Now, their condition is usually limited to the exposure with no other harmful advances being made. Nevertheless, indecent exposure is illegal. Actual sexual content with the victim is very rare. However, the person may masturbate while exposing themselves or while fantasizing about exposing themselves. Again, we call these people peeping Toms. Now, another commonality to paraphilia is fetishism. That's right. A lot of individuals have fetishes. And where you see a number of fetishes that take place, look at pornography. You have all types. You have transgender porn. You have granny porn, fat porn. You have teen porn, gay porn. What you see on camera, you have some individuals that feel in their right mind that they want to imitate what they see on screen. Again, fetishism is basically this. People with fetishes have sexual urges associated with non-living objects. Now, here's why I say that. Because the person becomes sexually aroused by wearing or touching the object. For example, the object of a fetish can be an article of clothing, such as underwear, rubber clothing, women's shoes, women's underwear, or lingerie. You ever heard of those guys that would take a woman's underwear after they have worn it? They want to sniff that woman's underwear. And they get aroused by the scent of that woman's underwear. Now, when it comes to the fetish, well, the fetish may replace sexual activity with a partner, or it may be integrated into sexual activity with a willing partner. Now, when the fetish becomes the sole object of sexual desire, sexual relationships are often avoided. Now, I am going to do a video on this next topic because a related disorder called partialism involves becoming sexually aroused by a body part, such as the feet, breast, or buttocks. Now, again, I just want to say this because a number of us men do get turned on by certain parts, turned on by the breast, get turned on by the butt, we get turned on by the hips, we get turned on by sense. But at the end of the day, when we become sexually aroused with feet, hands, and some people are, you got to take a look at yourself as a person. Now, I'm not saying that human body parts aren't great for getting a person aroused. But when you go deep into left field, that can be a big problem. Again, some of these sexual deviant behaviors can go into areas where some men have gone before. But for the most part, this is not natural behavior. Now, when I tell you about the next topic, you're really going to get an idea of what I'm talking about. Now, some of you may not have heard of this word. It's called frauderism. Now, frauderism is this. With this problem, the focus is on the person's sexual urges on touching or rubbing their genitals against the body of a non-consisting, unfamiliar person. Now, in most cases, frauderism, males rub their genital area against the female, often in the crowded public location. Now, the contact that is made with that unfamiliar person is generally illegal. Now, I'm sure this has also happened in the workplace, or it happens when people are rushing to a subway or rushing from a ball game, rushing anywhere in a crowded area where people just can't get out. But in the meantime, when this happens, person does have a problem. And again, this is part of the sexual deviant behavior. Because what happens when a man rubs his genitals against a female, he gets hard or erect. And then he gets fantasies about having sex with this unfamiliar female. And after that, he may want to touch her on her breast and on her butt. Now, at the end of the day, you may get slapped or the cops called on you. But frotteurism is a behavior that a number of men, and you have women who also have frotteurism too, because when it comes to sexual arousal, human beings, they do a good job of giving each other arousal. However, when the arousal is not wanted by the other person, that's where the problems start. This is where sexual harassment starts. This is where Me Too, this is where Time's Out starts. Although it's illegal, these individuals need help. But at the end of the day, what generally happens is this person may lose a job. They may go to jail. They may be put on a sexual offenders list. Why? Because they had an itch that they couldn't scratch. But at the end of the day, this person may need help, because it's not uncommon when there's illicit touching between men and women, known as frotteurism, in crowded places. Now, this one you're definitely familiar with. I'm just going to shorten it. This one is called pedo, P-E-D-O. You can fill in the rest of the word. I don't know if the algorithm will like it, so I'm just going to call it pedo. Now, people with pedo have fantasies, urges, and behaviors that involve illegal sexual activity with a child or children. Now, generally, the children involved are 13 years old or younger. Now, the behavior includes undressing the child, encouraging the child to watch the abuser masturbate, touching or fondling the child's genitals, or forcibly performing sex acts on the child. Now, this is very dangerous because we talk about the alphabet community. And you notice the alphabet community keeps getting larger. There's a plus at the end when it comes to the alphabet community. And they're waiting for that one grace to fall from the sky known as the P. Because you have groups out there like NAMLA, the North American Man Love, or the North American Man Boy Love Association. Very dangerous. And shout out to Brother Nate and others. They had a choir of some men singing a song, and this choir was from San Francisco, about "We're coming for your children." Well, a number of them believe in pedo. And again, pedo is when an adult fantasizes or they actually engage in sexual activity with children. Now, some pedos, known also or exclusive as pedophiles, are sexually attracted only to children and are not attracted to adults. Some limit their activity to incest, involving only their own children or close relatives, while others victimize the children. Now, predatory pedos may use force or threaten their victims with what will happen if they disclose the abuse. And moving on, when this happens, one must understand that healthcare providers are legally bound to report such abuse of minors. Now, pedo activity constitutes grape. I'm not going to spell the or say the word because of the algorithm. I say grape or RAPE, and it is a felony offense punishable by imprisonment. Now, again, this is pretty big, and I've heard a number of YouTubers talk about pedo. And if you don't know what it means, I just gave you the definition. So anything that you are missing right now, go back and watch this video because this is important information because there is a lot of sexual deviancy going on today. And this is why you have a number of individuals who are confused about who they really are. Because when you have demonic behavior taking place and it's not being checked, that means individuals who are experienced, particularly adults, can rob children of their childhood. And what's going on right now, we keep sexualizing this society to where there's going to be more and more deviant behavior taking place. So if you are an adult out there and you have children, you need to protect your children because there are predators out there. And where they're finding children is on some of these sites. But also you have some of these children who are lying about their age. This is why social media is dangerous because social media brings on predators. And you have a number of children who have been taken down by predators. That's why I tell you, social media is causing part of this sexual deviant behavior because you have a number of individuals who hide behind a keyboard and they're also fantasizing about children as well. And sometimes this can turn into child pornography. This can also turn into sex trafficking. Again, this pedophilia has always taken place. However, with social media, it's opened Pandora's box. Now, again, when we talk about sexual deviant behaviors, what about sexual masochism? Well, individuals with this disorder, for the most part, they use the act, and the act is real, not simulated, of being humiliated, beaten, or otherwise made to suffer in order to achieve sexual excitement and climax. These acts may be limited to verbal humiliation, or they may involve being beaten, bound, or otherwise abused. Masochists may act out their fantasies on themselves by such acts as cutting or piercing their skin or even burning themselves. Or they may seek out a partner who enjoys inflicting pain or humiliation on others. And when it comes to these activities, you have a partner. With the partner, there may be some spanking, bondage, and simulated RAPE. Sadomasochism or sadomasochistic fantasies and activities are not common amongst consenting adults. In most of these cases, however, the humiliation and abuse are acted out in fantasy. The participants are aware that their behavior is a game and actual pain and injury is avoided. You still got to be careful. It's dangerous. Now, again, this is dealing with fantasy. And see, this is what porn has presented as well. Again, if you look at the newer porn, you get anything and everything, and individuals are acting out in person what they see in porn. Now, a potentially dangerous, sometimes fatal masochistic activity is autoerotic partial asphyxiation. Now, with this, a person uses ropes, nooses, or plastic bags to induce the state of asphyxia. And when somebody is asphyxiated, you interrupt their breathing. And this is done, the asphyxiation, at the point of an orgasm. This is done to enhance orgasm. However, what's dangerous about this is if you're using plastic bags or nooses, somebody could accidentally get strangled or they could suffocate. And this is why accidental deaths sometimes occur. Again, individuals are acting out fantasies. They're getting into the moment and they don't understand the consequences because their mind isn't working correctly. And that's the part of the mental behavior. Individuals don't see what's going on because they want to get a feeling. It's like a natural high. You drink too much, you smoke too much, you're going to get a high, but you're not going to think of the consequences when you do something. Now, besides what we call sadomasochism or sexual masochism, there's sexual sadism. Now, individuals with this disorder have persistent fantasies in which sexual excitement results from inflicting psychological or physical suffering. That includes humiliation and terror on a sexual partner. This disorder is different from minor acts of aggression in normal sexual activity. For example, rough sex. In some cases, sexual sadists are able to find willing partners to participate in sadistic activities. And at its most extreme, sexual sadism involves illegal activities such as RAPE, torture, and even murder, in which case the death of a victim produces sexual excitement. Now, one should understand, it should be noted that while RAPE may be an expression of sexual sadism, the infliction of suffering is not the motive for most RAPISTS. And the victim's pain generally does not increase the RAPST apostrophe S sexual excitement. Rather, RAPE involves a combination of sex and gaining power over the victim. Now, these individuals need intensive psychiatric treatment. And of course, when you're dealing with RAPE, it is illegal. And an individual, I'm not going to say maybe jailed for these activities. They will be jailed for the activity because they are committing a crime. Now, here's something that we always hear in the news. Transvestism. Okay. Transvestism or transvestic fetishism refers to the practice by heterosexual males of dressing in female clothes to produce or enhance sexual arousal. Now, we call these individuals CDs, cross dressers. Now, the sexual arousal usually does not involve a real partner, but includes the fantasy that the individual is the female partner as well. Now, some men wear only one special piece of female clothing, such as underwear, while others fully dress as female, including hairstyle and makeup. Again, cross-dressing as a transvestite is not a problem unless it is necessary for the individual to become sexually aroused or experience sexual climax. You have people like RuPaul, and you have a number of other men who have done this. And this is why sometimes you cannot tell the difference between a real woman and a CD. And this is why some of these CDs get killed as well, because they don't really reveal who they really are. Again, a transvestite is basically a heterosexual male who is dressing up in women's clothing. Now, don't mistake this for what a drag queen is. A drag queen dresses up as a woman just for entertainment, period. Now, you also have a transgender. Now, a transgender is one who is living as the opposite gender every day, although they're still a male. Now, you also have a transsexual. That is one who has already become the opposite sex. Now, as far as a male is concerned, you have pre-op transsexuals and post-op transsexuals. Now, a pre-op transsexual is one who keeps his penis. Now, in the porn land, they call them he, she's, or she males. Now, you have the post-op transsexual who has gone through the complete operation to basically shape the penis as a vagina. Now, again, transsexualism is not a mental disorder, but I do believe that when you are given a kid who doesn't know anything about life an opportunity to become the opposite sex, that's a problem. And to me, that's child abuse. And it's child abuse because that child is confused. And you see a lot of this going on today in the society. Now, again, this is not a slap against the LGBTQ community. Where I have the problem is when you are involving children, because children are getting abused enough. They're getting killed by their own mothers and fathers. They're getting put in positions to where they're just being taught sex in school. They're taught about anal sex. There was a situation where a trans woman was reading a book to little children, and some of these adults are trying to get children into their lifestyles, and that's what I have a problem with. And when you are using children to basically solidify your agenda, to me, that should be a crime, because that's child abuse. And this is why we have to continue to protect our children. You know, we give adults all these rights here, particularly females. But when it comes to children, they don't have rights. Children are our future, and we should preserve them as long as we can by teaching them right from wrong. When you're an adult, you can do whatever you want to do, but when you're a child, you need to learn how society works, because there are some demonic people. And when you get into these lifestyles, these are the individuals, I'm not saying all of them, but a number of them have fantasies of abusing your children, whether it is sexually or whether it is a fantasy of having sex with children. That's why you've had a number of men jailed for child pornography. Now, something else you need to know: voyeurism. Voyeurism is close to being exhibitionism. They're almost the same. Now, basically, again, when you're an exhibitionist, you're flashing yourself. But when you are a voyeur, you're basically what we call a peeping Tom. Now, let me make a correction on that, because I said an exhibitionist, you would be a peeping Tom. Well, they're similar, but a peeping Tom is one who stands outside and they may see a woman or they may see two people having sex and they'll get aroused by that. Again, an exhibitionist is one that could actually see two people having sex as well. And it could be a body of a woman and they're also standing outside, but they're masturbating to get a climax. But both are very dangerous. Again, when it comes to voyeurism, this disorder involves achieving sexual arousal. Again, voyeurism involves achieving sexual arousal by observing an unsuspecting and non-consenting person who is undressing or unclothed or engaged in sexual activity. Now, this behavior may conclude with masturbation by the voyeur. Now, the voyeur does not seek sexual contact with the person they are observing. Other names for this behavior are peeping or peeping Tom. Well, these are individuals who are definitely perverted. Now, you got to ask this $1 million question, because a number of people don't know about this. How common are paraphilias? Well, this is going to shock you, but even though it is very small, it does happen. And what I'm going to tell you right now is most paraphilias are rare and about 20 times more common amongst males than females. Well, that's not surprising, because a number of men out here are perverted, but you have a number of women out here who are also predatory. But see, the problem with society is it always looks at men, because the media has always covered everything that men have done. But you have a number of predatory and perverted women out here as well. Again, the stats tell you that paraphilia is rare, but 20 times more males commit paraphilia than females. However, the reason for this disparity is really not clear. While several of these disorders are associated with aggressive behavior, others are not aggressive or harmful. Some paraphilias, such as pedo, exhibitionism, voyeurism, sadism, and frotteurism, They're all basically federal offense. Now, having paraphilic fantasies or behavior, however, does not always mean the person has a mental illness. Why? Because the fantasies and behaviors can exist in less severe forms that are not dysfunctional in any way. And also, they don't impede the development of healthy relationships, or they don't harm the individual or others, or they do not entail criminal offenses. However, they may be limited to fantasy during masturbation or intercourse with a partner. Again, they may be limited to fantasy during masturbation or intercourse with a partner. Now, again, the question is what causes paraphilia? Again, it's not clear what causes paraphilia, but some experts believe it is caused by a childhood trauma, such as sexual abuse. And this is where sometimes people don't want to admit this, but homosexuality starts. A lot of what you're seeing starts in families, incest. Some children have been RAPED when they were younger. And what happens is you have individuals that fail to get help because sometimes when you are abused by a certain behavior, you may imitate that certain behavior. You may think it's all right. This is why I said when you have a belief, there's a problem, a behavior problem, you need to get help. Again, when it comes to paraphilia, it really isn't clear what caused it. But a number of us believe it is caused by childhood trauma, such as sexual abuse. Now, others suggest that objects or situations can become sexually arousing if they are frequently and repeatedly associated with a pleasurable sexual activity. In most cases, the individual with a paraphilia has a difficulty developing personal and sexual relationships with others. And the reason why is because you have a number of individuals who are constantly masturbating and they're utilizing toys and they're utilizing porn. So they get turned off by the actual intercourse and developing relationships with another person. And this is why that partner you're with may not satisfy you. And one must understand that many paraphilias begin during adolescence and they continue into adulthood because the intensity and occurrence of the fantasies associated with paraphilia vary with the individual, but they usually decrease as the person ages. Well, that's true because I'm going to take a man, for instance. Sometimes a man becomes ED, erection dysfunctional. So his penis isn't going to work like it did when he was younger. Now, what causes that? Well, diabetes, again, low testosterone, stress, and even drugs like Viagra. They may give you a temporary cure. But as you get older, your body goes through changes. And I'm not saying this happens for all males. I'm just using males and even females too. Hormonal changes and body changes cause the decrease in any type of sexual activity. Now, when it comes to paraphilia, how is it treated? Well, most cases of paraphilia are basically treated with counseling and therapy to help the person modify their behavior. And of course, medications may help to decrease the compulsiveness associated with paraphilia and reduce the number of deviant sexual fantasies and behaviors. However, in some cases, hormones are prescribed for individuals who experience frequent occurrences of abnormal or dangerous sexual behavior. And many of these medications basically work by reducing the sexual urges or the individual's sex drive. Now, again, when it comes to any mental health disorder, and see this one, this is on the fence because you have some acts that are non-consensual, but they can become sensual, and you have some that are consensual. Some are illegal, some are legal as long as you hide it behind closed doors. Now, you have to ask yourself a question. How successful is treatment for any type of paraphilia? Well, to be most effective, treatment for paraphilia must be provided on a long-term basis. An unwillingness to comply with treatment can hinder its success. So it is imperative that people with paraphilias of an illegal nature receive professional help before they harm others or themselves, or they can become sexual offenders by creating legal problems for themselves. And this is why I always say, as a woman, you got to be careful who you're hanging around, and as a man as well. Because I can tell you this right now. We live in a day and age where you could be jailed just for tapping a person on the shoulder, talking about a man tapping a woman, even if it's accidental. Now, going back to all these different types of sexual deviant behaviors, although a number of them are based on getting a climax through a fantasy, you really got to look at some of these individuals. And again, if you've seen a number of my videos, I've always talked about behaviors connecting one another. And I believe that, and my spidey senses are talking, it's definitely child abuse. And see, the problem with child abuse, children will grow up and they don't say anything about it. Now, is it a child's fault that they don't say anything about it? No, because they are afraid. And what you see when it comes to this sexual deviant behavior starts in the family. And it's not just the men. I mean, I've heard stories where you had grown women and they went out to the backyard with a little boy. He didn't pull his pants down fast enough. She pulled his pants down for him and she starts feeling on his penis. She becomes predatory. See, here's the problem too, when it comes to deviant behavior, because all the articles written always focus on the men. And that's always been a big problem, but they give a woman a break. However, you have women just as predatory. And I saw one time on Facebook Live where a young woman was giving her son, I shouldn't say a young woman, I should say a mother, was giving her son oral sex. And you have what we call the son husband, but the Oedipus theory going on. That's when the mother and the son, they get together and have themselves a late night rendezvous. Again, this is where the mother starts treating the son as if the son were her man. And see, nobody ever talks about this because we always associate behaviors like this with men. And here, I'm going to say it here on my video. You have a number of women who are weaponizing sex themselves. Here's the difference, though. When it comes to a woman, because society is not used to women being predators, women can always be the victim. They can always say that the man did it. That's the problem. And you've had women also get on top of a guy when he was sleeping. Is that raped? To me, he's violated. Some women have gotten pregnant by doing that. But again, we put all the blame on the men. Now, what I'm discussing to you is the types of deviant behavior, and they're just some of them that you see. Now, do I put them in a class of alternative lifestyles? No, I don't. Maybe transvestism, that can be considered an alternative lifestyle. But when it comes to exhibitionism and voyeurism, no, these individuals, they're straight perverts. These are individuals who are inheritably sick and they need help. And these individuals believe they're not harming anybody. Well, you're sitting there with your blinds open and you're a woman, you're brushing your teeth, and it's a guy that walks up naked and he starts masturbating outside your window. That's going to be scary. Or if a husband and wife are having sex and you got your window open, and there's a man standing out there masturbating, getting aroused, that's a problem. But see, there are a lot of deviant people who want to make these sexual deviant behaviors legal. These are the individuals you don't want running your country. And particularly, it's the ones who come from I'm not going to say the Democratic Party, I'm going to say the individuals way out there on the left. And we have individuals promoting this type of behavior. To me, that's child abuse as well. Although it might not be your child, you're still enabling that behavior. And when it comes to children, children are our future. And I have seen enough children, besides the murders, besides them being used in sex trafficking, child porn, children today are going to be confused because of adults. And see, these adults are basically acting out behaviors because when they were children, I guarantee something happened to them. They didn't get help. And it is very, very imperative as an adult that you get help. And again, what's going on here in society is you have individuals looking at social media. I know that OnlyFans, they used to have individuals on there performing sex acts for money. I mean, if you think about it, here in America, sex is a commodity, but it's a big money maker. And when it comes to deviant behavior like sex, it's made a number of people millions, if not billions of dollars. The sex industry is a billion-dollar industry. But what I'm emphasizing here is the types of behavior that are associated with frotteurism and voyeurism and sadism and masochism. Not only are they aggressive, but they can turn out violent because something else can occur. Again, remember I told you that other issues can be involved? What if somebody was on drugs or drinking? Well, now you have a drunk person engaging in a sexual deviant behavior because they have a fantasy and they have a person that they want to share that fantasy with. He gets aroused, or even she gets aroused, and somebody ends up dead. That can happen. But we don't want to talk about that. Now, something else that wasn't mentioned out here as well, and I'm going to get to that at a later time, that should have been on that list: bestiality. Believe it or not, is real. In fact, some of these deviant sexual behaviors involve having a lot of partners. And what comes with having a lot of partners? The partners that you are with may be unchecked, they may be unclean. And what does that bring? It brings diseases. And don't get me wrong, HIV is still out here as well. And this is why any lifestyle, whether it's the normative heterosexual lifestyle or the alternative lifestyle, such as swingers and paraphilia, you still have to be careful. Because in this day and age, you have a lot of sexual liberation going on, and you have people that aren't thinking. And when people don't think, except at that moment, or what happens, they're going to end up hurting not just themselves, but other individuals. Again, sex should be, in my humble opinion, pleasurable. Now, that's my humble opinion. Now, depending on what type of person you are, if you're out there doing deviant sex acts like burning yourself, cutting yourself, tying each other up with ropes, spanking one another, all I can say is you better be careful. In fact, if you're cutting yourself with a knife, and what if that knife is a rusty knife? Well, if you don't take care of that with a tetanus shot, you may end up getting lockjaw. Again, I'm pointing out other issues that can take place. And there's a lot of other kinky things that weren't on this list, like tossing salad. Because again, when you have any type of sex, and like I said, I'm not for all this sexual deviant behavior, but I know it takes place. One thing that a number of individuals must understand: you need to get checked, number one, by a doctor to see if you have anything. And number two, you need to keep your hygiene up. Hygiene is very, very important. But again, I'm trying to get off the subject. What I'm emphasizing here is with all these deviant sex behaviors that are taking place, besides me, no one else is talking about them. And the problem is you have the alphabet community, and they want to get the letter P included in that alphabet because their agenda is to get your children. And when that happens, we're going to definitely have a downfall of civilization. Now, again, adults are old enough to make their own decisions, even if the decisions are wrong. But in the long run, when you have adults where one is not consenting and the other is, that's another problem as well. But again, here in America, sex sells. But with the type of leadership that we have today, they don't really care about sexual deviant behavior. They don't care about families. They only care about themselves because they want to stay in power. And when you have lobbyist groups like I'm going to call NAMBLA, the North American Man Boy Love Association, a lobbyist group. Why? Because they are trying to lobby to get that P put on that alphabet. They believe it's all right. These are the individuals who don't care about your children. But you have individuals that'll kill children before they go after these knuckleheads out there trying to abuse your children. And again, we have grown adults out here who know better. But they're still taking place in all this sexual deviant behavior. Now, again, what you heard tonight was paraphilia. And paraphilia is basically a synonym for sexual deviant behavior. Now, is it in the DSM, the Diagnostical Statistical Manual for Mental Disorders? Well, I know homosexuality used to be, but that's not in there anymore. Now, sexual addiction, I believe, is in there because if you tie everything together, you basically have individuals who have sexual addictions. Now, most of us equate sex with having actual intercourse. No, there's different ways to have sex. And I know when I mention objects, well, objects are like battery operated boyfriends known as vibrators, Benoit balls, beads, butt plugs. This is what individuals are using out here. Dildos. And you have individuals out here who basically want to go where no other person has gone. And these are individuals who are in some ways getting past outright freaky. But again, I always tell you, when you're an adult, you make your own decision. Make your own decisions. But tampering with children is very bad. Now, again, the only thing I can say when it comes to sexual deviant behavior is you have to see the mental and psychological and emotional impacts that it can have on a person. And I believe today, while a number of individuals, men and women, can't pair bond, because see, when you have sexual deviant behavior, and that's also included with promiscuity, because you have a lot of partners, well, for the most part, you're not going to be able to have a stable relationship. Why? Because when it comes to sex, you'll never be satisfied, because you always have to have another person. But also something else could happen when you're having recreational sex like that, and you don't protect yourself. STDs and unwanted pregnancies. And it doesn't matter what age, because living in today's culture of so-called sexual freedom, you can see what's happening to marriages. Individuals are committing a lot of infidelity, because what happened to these adults when they were younger has come to the surface. And at the end of the day, if you didn't come from that background where you were abused or molested, you're not going to understand the other person, especially if you get your emotions tied in with the other person, because they're not going to understand themselves because they can't explain it. But one thing you should know when it comes to interacting with somebody, and I don't care what anybody says, your sexual past does mean something, because at the end of the day, individuals who have been paraphilias or had paraphilia, for the most part, they've had a number of partners, and they're not going to have any discipline. Therefore, when it comes to having a committed relationship, they're not going to be able to do it. And I'm putting this information out because this is serious. So, if you find that you are having an addiction, a sexual addiction, and you've involved yourself with one or a number of these sexual deviant behaviors. Now, I can understand experimental, but if it continues, you got that addiction. You need to take care of it, because at the end of the day, if you don't take care of your sexual deviant behavior, not only will you hurt yourself, but you will hurt others. And that's my commentary for this edition of the 411 Talk Zone Radio Show, right here on Blog Talk Radio. If you like what I just presented, please like, share, and subscribe to the 411 Talk Zone Radio Show right here on YouTube, and hit the Cash App at the bottom of my video. It is $LEJ01021965. I want you to get the likes up, because this information is important, especially if you have children. Also, if you've had some abuse or molestation problems in the past, I'm giving you information on how you can resolve it. Now, again, if you have any mental problems, please seek help. Because, like I said, with a mind is a terrible thing to waste. Well, a life is a terrible thing to waste when your number is not ready to be called yet either. Now, moving on. If you're looking for some educational material in the STEM field, you check out my second channel, The Mind of STEM. On that channel, you get a daily dose of science, technology, engineering, and math. And on that channel, some of the topics that I get into are civil engineering, mechanical engineering, cybersecurity, etymology, chemistry, and biology. And I'm going to work on bringing that back too. I haven't done them in a while. Blog Talk Radio Show. Now I have a guest calling number, 215-383-5785. Now, if you cannot find me on YouTube or Blog Talk Radio, you can find me on Twitter, MeWe, and Parler. Now, when it comes to the 411 Talk Zone radio show, I utilize Twitter, MeWe, and Parler because basically Parler and MeWe, they're political sites, and the type of content that I do here on the 411 Talk Zone radio show is definitely permissible on those platforms. Now, the Mind of STEM is permissible on that platform as well, but it really doesn't go with that type of platform. So eventually I may end up putting my Mind of STEM videos, not just on Twitter, but on LinkedIn. But at the end of the day, I'm gonna leave you with this. Be blessed for what you have. Don't worry about what you don't have. Always know that the sun rises in the east and sets in the west. And also with this video, so nobody gets offended, but I will tell you this: if it doesn't apply, let it fly. But if the shoe fits, wear it. If you don't like the shoe, change it. And once again, thank you for listening to this edition of the 411 Talk Zone radio show right here on YouTube. Until next time, my name is Leon Jones. I want you all to have a wonderful and blessed night. God bless you. I'm out.